Inside the Arena is presented by Snoqualmie Casino and Hotel, Seattle's closest sportsbook.
Welcome to Inside the Arena, your source for everything off the ice, off the court, and outside the field of play. With your hosts, KOMO Sports Director Niko and KOMO Senior Reporter Chris Daniels.
We've got multiple crowds applauding this week because it's 47 straight weeks, Niko Tamurian.
Wow.
Inside the Arena. Here we are once again.
We have to have a party for 1 year in 5 weeks or whatever that is.
Yeah, because I think there's 52 weeks in a year.
Yeah, I think so. If my math is right. How are you, man?
It's been a crazy couple of weeks. I was off on a little bit of vacation. We had Samantha Holloway, the owner of the Kraken, before a big announcement that we're going to talk about on this show, because what we talk about is always off the ice, off the court, off the field of play, and there was some big news with the Seattle Kraken, as you know, this week. Yeah,
I think, and we'll talk about it more in a second, I just think that, boy, these are some bold moves, and they happened in rapid succession. You think about the off the ice, so to speak, stuff that you did your story with Samantha on, with ticket prices and whatnot. Then the next week, it was all about on the ice with the head coach and coaching or front office shakeup. So I think it's a really strong message, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. But I'll tell you what, the Kraken is not messing around right now, and that's a good thing.
No, they've got their tentacles on a lot of things, and so do we in terms of the pulse of sports business. This week, a lot of people, as you know, talking about the NFL, talking about the draft. We are, full disclosure, recording before the NFL draft takes place and unfolds. But you have an interview this week with, I think, a name that's familiar to a lot of Seattle sports fans. Hey, does that mean the pick is in, Bill Fesh?
With the first pick in the 2025 NFL draft, the Tennessee Titans select producer Bill from KOMO News.
Oh, that deserves some extra applause.
Yes. Oh, of course, they're going to take the former Coug Cam Ward. Yeah, but to what you were talking about with Matt Leinart, really, obviously, a good dude. It was a great conversation. And he has a podcast, Throwbacks. I suppose you could call it our sister podcast in our Sinclair network of those shows. And he does it with Jerry Ferrera, former of the show Entourage. So it's a really cool mix. We talk about that. We talk about certainly the draft and what the Seahawks need to do in that regard. Again, with the precursor, if you're listening to this Friday or Saturday, we recorded this and did that interview before the draft. But we also talk about the world of NIL and imagine what guys like him and Reggie Bush and that 04 USC team could have made if that was a thing back then. Holy moly.
That's why Reggie wanted his Heisman back, right? Yeah, so that's going to be something coming up a little bit later in the show. But what we like to do every week, we like to touch all the bases. It's something that we call four corners: what's good, what's bad, off the ice, off the court, off the field of play. Niko, I think you've already given us the signs. If we're stealing signs, we know what's good this week. What do you think's good?
Did you see that when the Blue Jays pitcher, Jose Barrios, thought Cal was stealing signs, and then he barked at him and said, "I'll get you," and then Cal hit the 2-run double right after that? Did you see that?
It was great. It was great.
Yeah, okay,
big dumper.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, gotta love. You don't get Cal mad, man. I'm telling you. But stealing signs has to do with what we already talked about. I'm going to applaud the Kraken here because a lot of organizations over time have made moves, firing coaches, changes in the front office, whatever you call it. But what I like about this is that we're only in year 4 of this thing. And sure, the last 2 seasons haven't gone right, but they're just going all in. They're doing what a lot of fan bases, I'm not just talking about here in Seattle, I'm not pointing out franchises here in Seattle, I'm saying across the country, maybe even the world for that matter. Fans are like, hey, we wish our team would do this or do that. Well, Kraken's doing it. Okay? You never want to see anybody lose their job, and certainly Dan Bousma is a good dude, and we wish him well and all that. But the fact of the matter is, what we've talked about often in this show, the Kraken understands the landscape. They understand at the honeymoon, so to speak, as a new franchise. It might be waning, so to speak. And so first they do what you talked about with Samantha last week, lowering ticket prices. Who does that when they're already selling a high capacity of that arena? Nobody does that. The Kraken does, because they're listening to the fans. And I swear I'm not trying to sound like a homer for these guys. I just really admire that they don't screw around. They don't mess around. They're like, okay, well, we need to do this for our fans because we've heard the feedback. We know the fans aren't happy with the results the last year. So guess what? We're going to fire a coach, and we don't care if it's 3 head coaches in 3 years because we think it's going to make this team better. They didn't like, Ron Francis mentioned, they didn't like some of the things they were seeing. If you talk in hockey world circles, it became apparent what the Kraken was going to do early in most games. Like, it wasn't a huge surprise, and certainly other teams capitalized on it. I'm talking about, schematically what they were doing, okay? Yeah. And then, of course, listen, they make the change in the front office. They're calling it a bump up for Ron Francis to president of hockey operations. Jason Botterill is the new general manager. These are all monumental moves. These are moves that a lot of franchises will endure a lot more playoff losses before they make. But the Kraken recognized they didn't even have to do something. They really didn't. They understood the status quo wasn't good enough for them, and it wasn't good enough for fans that have been there since it was still the Key Arena and they were trying to upgrade it, right? I think it's really special what they're doing. I applaud it. And I think, as we talked about in my interview with Ron on this show, they go into this summer with a lot of ammunition and salary cap space and draft picks that can be moved. Jason Botterill now has the final say of those personnel decisions, and he was beyond excited at that press conference on Tuesday about what he can do with all those assets. So applaud the Kraken. Well done, not messing around, making things happen.
Here's my question for you, because I was not in the room. I've seen what has been said in the press conference. What do you think the mood was like at that press conference with what they're calling new leadership for the Kraken?
I think it was a move of a new beginning. I hate to say new era. It's so often overused in our sports world. Especially, you can't use the word era when it's only been 4 years of existence. But it's a positive feeling. It's understanding that what had happened the last 2 years wasn't good enough. And so certainly that's not a positive. But they really like the direction of what's next. I think that's why they made the move. They were so confident in kind of delegating, not just having Ron do the GM duties, having him now be the hockey ops and be able to kind of foster the development, because we know the future of the Kraken is predicated on these young guns that we're seeing, whether it's the guys in Seattle like Shane Wright, Matty Beniers, we saw a glimpse of Yanni Newman, or it's the guys coming up like Berkeley Cat and Jagger Furcus, those guys, and more. I'm not intentionally leaving anybody out. They understand they have to foster that, and so that's going to be kind of Ron's thing. And then the day-to-day, the signings, the draft, the trades, Ron's going to have input, but that's going to be Jason Botterill. And so between that and, listen, there was a lot of compliments about Dan Bilesma and who he is, but there was also, I don't want to say it was a surprise, but more than I expected about how, we didn't like how the team looked at this point. We didn't like how they're not saying Dan's a bad coach, but they were saying, they didn't like what they saw on the ice. And I shouldn't say I'm surprised, because certainly a lot of fans felt that way. I guess I was surprised in a slight way that it was openly said in this press conference, with Samantha, Todd, of course, Ron, and Jason. And so I think when you look at all of that, your long rambling answer is, I think they feel so confident about these moves that there is a positive mindset moving forward, and they feel like this is a big summer to launch this thing forward.
A couple of my observations, this is clearly Samantha Holloway's franchise now. Yeah. She's clearly in control. It's rare that you see an owner at a press conference like that. She was on this show. She talked about lowering the ticket prices. She is here full time. It's been a little bit more than 2 seasons that she's been here full time. I think this is her way of putting a stamp on the organization. By all accounts, everybody I talk to thinks the world of Samantha Holloway.
How can you not?
She is coming in now, and I think has said, "Hey, I've looked around. This is the direction that I think this organization needs to go in." I think also, I think a lot about body language, and when Dave Haxtell was fired, I don't know if that was necessarily Ron Francis's move. Mm-hmm. And you saw he had a different tenor and tone during that announcement. And the hiring of Dan Bilesma. That's why I ask you about the tone in the room, because it definitely seems like this is some sort of major shift internally at the Kraken that really has taken place over the course of a couple of years. And I think by all accounts, Samantha is fully involved on a day-to-day basis. We see it with that the moves of the last now week plus. And I think what we're going to see in the offseason, just based on the comments in that press conference, they're looking for somebody who can score 100 points. Mitch Marner comes to mind in Toronto. And they're not going to say that at a press conference, but that would be he's probably the belle of the ball, so to speak, in the free agent market. And they need a big bruiser on the back line, on the blue line, somebody who can get in front of the net. We heard Jaden Schwartz's name called out as somebody who's getting to the net. They need somebody on the back line who's really ready to knock some people around, I think, here for the next season number 5 for the Kraken. It's hard to believe.
It is hard to believe. And spot on everything. I agree with everything you said, Chris. You need a big-time scorer. And that by doing so, is it Mitch Marner? I don't know. We can hope. But by doing that, some of the guys that have kind of carried the scoring load the last couple of years or even this year, they become complementary pieces, and suddenly you're talking about a team that's just on a different level. One more point about that press conference, and speaking of Samantha, so one of the questions I asked was about how the players are handling this, and how that, you're talking about now 3 coaches in 3 years. And so how do the players handle that? Certainly not having that continuity and things like that. And it was a question Jason Bottrell fielded, because I said it was for any of the 4. But I love that Samantha said, and if I can add, she kind of jumped in the end with conviction and belief that this is absolutely the right step for this program. Because here's the idea. They're so strongly in conviction that they can get a different coach that'll be, exponentially better, that it doesn't matter if it's 3 coaches in 3 years. They believe so strongly in it. And that's a team to me that's going to make the right move. It didn't matter if the optics of, was it volatile? No, and I don't think it is volatile. Is it a franchise that's making moves just because? No, there's a real conviction about it. And again, I know we've talked about this at length, but that's why it was my positive 4 corner, because you don't see a lot of franchises that open about the process, that strong in their convictions about it, and certainly able to make, quite frankly, some of the most bold moves I've seen in a long time in professional sports. The Kraken, a young franchise in the grand scheme of things, did it. Well done. And we'll see how it goes, but well done.
Wouldn't surprise me if one of those quote-unquote star players on the Kraken combined with one of their high draft picks packaged up for something. We will wait and see on that. Hey, speaking of a package, and also positive, how about them Seawolves?
Yeah.
Major League Rugby. Big announcement, kind of flew under the radar. Marshawn Lynch has decided he wanted to invest in another franchise. Yes, he's a Kraken co-owner, minority owner. He has now bought into the Seawolves along with Marcus Peters, the UW great, and they sold out the rugby game where they made their first appearance. Those 2 men now are tasked with trying to introduce rugby to another audience in Western Washington, try to get more youth involved. We've talked about the World Cup of Rugby and coming to the United States. All of this is intertwined, but boy, they got a nice shot of excitement from that announcement as well.
Yeah, I think that first of all, it's just cool to see the jerseys. It's really, it's just a cool thing. Anytime you see Marshawn, like when he was at the Kraken driving the Zamboni, I mean, how cool is that? But you know what? And we've talked about it in the show, and we had Drew on a few weeks back. The Seawolves deserve more exposure. It's a really fun sport, even if you don't totally understand what's going on when you first start watching. It's great. Starfire was rocking last weekend for that sold-out match. So you know what? I love it, and good for Marshawn. Some guys after retirement, they focus on just the hometown. And certainly we know Marshawn's doing a lot in Oakland. We know that. But he's still here often in Seattle, and he's doing a lot for people that rooted him on in his professional career. And I think that's just as admirable as it comes, no question about it.
We've expressed a lot of positivity already this week. What don't you like?
I'm going to keep it short and sweet because I'm a positive guy. I don't like to dwell on the negatives. But you've known on this show, Chris, mini rant upcoming, is that I have a lot of issues with like a lot of online blogger type stuff, right? And I'm not calling anybody specific out because a lot of them there's a lot of good writing out there in that space. I want to make it a broad thing. But I have a huge issue with mock drafts. And thank goodness, I guess this is the positive of it, that we're just about done. We're done reading those now, right?
Yeah.
But my negative will be this. How much stock is put into those from like September, from like last summer, let's be frank about it, onward. And I want you to say, I've saved a bunch. I'm going to show you how wrong those all are when it's all
I can't wait.
You know what I'm saying?
That's already a tease for next week.
With the second pick in the 2025 NFL Draft, the Cleveland Browns select Chris Daniels of Inside the Arena. Well, I just go into that mode.
There goes my career.
Do you play quarterback or what? But my point is this. Can we stop putting so much stock into mock drafts? Now, listen, when it's some of the experts out there, like the ESPN folks, I talked with Matt Miller. He's great. Mel Kiper's been doing it forever. But even the guys at the top level like that, they don't really know. Because there's just so many things. By the time we get to like 18 for the Seahawks, there's just so many things that can happen between 1 and 18 and so on and so forth. And certainly when you have these like full 7-round mock drafts, like, come on. Yeah. Like, you really know who's going to be picked at 200.
So I would just say that there is a game within that game, too, with agents trying to get their players in the first round in somebody's mock draft and get another mock draft to say they're a first-round material. There's a lot of money at stake if you're a first-rounder versus a second-rounder or a fifth-year option, all that kind of stuff. So there is a game within that game.
Did you see there's negative stuff put out about the receiver McMillan from Arizona that, like, allegedly he doesn't practice hard. He only practices hard when scouts are there. That, like, reeks of a team that wants him and wants him to fall to a certain spot. I'm not saying it's not true. I don't personally know the guy. But you know what I'm saying? Like, you see that stuff come out, and it's like all of a sudden he's, like, trickling down on these online mock drafts. I'm like, cut it out. We'll see what happens, but cut it out.
Well, speaking of trickling out, we talked about expansion a lot on this show, and we're going to talk about NBA expansion in just a second. But my negative this week is the Professional Women's Hockey League. There has been a lot of news percolating. We've had Beth Knox from the Seattle Sports Commission on the show talking about the PWHL and a potential expansion franchise. They have officially committed to Vancouver. Yes, that news coming out this week, but no announcement yet, as we're recording right now, on a Seattle Professional Women's Hockey League expansion franchise. Vancouver will be the 7th team in that league, play at the Pacific Coliseum, not at GM Place downtown, or the old GM Place, Rogers Place now. But we're still waiting on news potentially about a Seattle expansion franchise, and the question will be whether we're talking about a women's hockey league expansion franchise before an NBA expansion franchise.
Well, now that's an interesting question. But listen, I think we all saw that crowd at Climate Pledge on the barnstorming tour a few months back. It would be, understanding these things, like look at the NBA thing. They can hit roadblocks, they can take time, but I'd be shocked if they didn't expand to Seattle. 7's an odd number too. Vancouver needs a travel partner, or even those, East Coast teams, you fly out for one game in Vancouver. So I'd be stunned if Seattle wasn't added to the fold there.
You are dead on the money. One thing we need to talk about every week, Supersonic Minute. Here we go. I found the air horn that'll eventually play in Seattle when the Sonics come back. Okay, you know this. There was some scuttlebutt in the last week. Adam Silver talked again, this time to Pat McAfee, about a bunch of NBA stuff, including expansion. And he got people excited again in Seattle when he said, and I'm quoting now, I think as we get into the summer, we'll get into a formal process of how we go about doing it. I don't want to say it's a foregone conclusion we're going to expand, but I also think over time organizations tend to grow. There's no doubt there's been interest in Las Vegas, Seattle. I've been very public about it, that it was a market that was fantastic for the league that we left at the time for understandable reasons, but there's no doubt there continues to be enormous passion in that market for the NBA. We're looking at those markets and others. People got excited about it, that he was saying, maybe in July we'll talk about this, maybe Las Vegas and Seattle. This is all kind of word salad that we've already heard from the NBA commissioner at multiple points in the last year. If you go back and look at statements, this really was nothing new. It was a question for the McAfee audience, for people who haven't heard about where things stand in the past. But I caution people not to get too excited about that. There wasn't a whole lot new from what he'd even said a month earlier.
Sure, and I think that, the positive is that he's saying Seattle publicly, probably a half dozen times last few weeks. But you're right, it's all similar. And it's not all that dissimilar to a few months ago when he wasn't saying Seattle specifically. I feel like that's the only change, so let's hang on. Let's hope they talk about it in July, but again, we were thinking, potentially the exhibition game last October would be that kind of watershed moment. Things happen, this is a complicated process, like you said. We're cautiously optimistic. Let's hang on, right?
Yep, Celtics deal still needs to get fully finalized, T's crossed, I's dotted. It's not there yet. And then once that happens, as I like to say, game on.
Yeah, game on. Let's go.
You know who else says game on sometimes?
I don't know. Is it Matt Leinart?
Matt Leinart. Yeah, that was called a transition.
I didn't know where you were going with that. Hey, listen, this is a really fun conversation. I hope everybody enjoys it. He's a really cool dude. It's wide-ranging. We're going to bring it to you right after this.
Luxury awaits at Snoqualmie Casino and Hotel, where comfort meets elegance. This summer, experience breathtaking Cascade views, world-class dining, and play your favorite games. Elevate your next getaway by combining effortless style with the utmost relaxation. Seattle's closest is now Snoqualmie Casino and Hotel.
You've done so many things in your life. Where does this next chapter kind of lead you with doing throwbacks and all the cool guests and everything you have with that regard?
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun, and it's so funny. I could even look back like a couple of years ago. I'm just like, podcast. I don't think I'll ever do a podcast. It has to be the right fit. It has to be with the right people. Just things happen, and then all of a sudden, it's like stars align. And I think I'm super grateful for Sinclair and just putting Jerry and I together. Jerry and I didn't know each other. We obviously knew of each other, and we kind of ran in the same kind of circle of people back in the day. And that's kind of what the story's all about, is just like two guys that kind of ran through LA at the time, and me being in sports and him being on Entourage and entertainment and acting, and kind of the parallels that we're at right now in our life, being dads and sports and all those kind of things. So it's been so much fun just to and Jerry always said this early on, it's like we're actually getting to know each other as we do the pod weekly, which is really cool, because we already feel like we're close buddies, know each other's families and all those things. And I think I hope that comes out in the pod when we're just talking and and just telling stories and having the guests on. But it's been a lot of fun. Every week is different. Guests are fun. Obviously talking to a lot of unique individuals, hearing a lot of great stories, and yeah, it's been a blast. So I'm just grateful that this kind of all happened. It all just it was all life's about timing, and it was perfect timing.
Definitely. And it's funny you mentioned that, because that's the one thing when I listen that jumps out to me. You can tell you guys are just getting to know each other, but that's also the authenticity of it.
Right.
It makes it so much more different and real, quite frankly, than auto shows. I know you kind of spoke to it in that regard, but how much fun is that part of it? You're doing this show, you're doing something that quite clearly you're having fun with, but also it's this thing that the audience can kind of notice as well.
Yeah, I mean, you said, I think just being genuine and authentic to yourself, and just relatability. I think that's really what we're just it sounds stupid, but we're just two dudes who love sports, who have little kids, who are the chaos of life, and we've kind of been through the peaks and valleys of our worlds and entertainment and sports. And I think just kind of sharing that and just kind of opening that up to our audience is really what it's all about. And then sharing that with the people that we have on, and just talking about kind of the everyday stuff that you would just talk about with your boys, on the golf course. I think that's kind of how we vision it. And it's fun. Yeah, it's fun to get to know him. And obviously I was just always a fan of Jerry. Jerry's just a great dude. He's an avid sports fan. He's a great dude. He's great at this. He's got a great family. His boys are hilarious. They're literally just like mine. So there's just so much. His wife Bree's amazing. It's just fun. It's just been so much fun. It just feels like a perfect match, and we're still growing. We're still learning about each other, which I think makes it more exciting as well.
For you personally, obviously this life in football and kind of switching gears a little bit, what has that been like? Has it been what you thought it might be? What's that experience been like?
It's been great. Gosh, I've been out of football for so long. I tell I don't even feel like I'm a football player anymore. It's just so weird, I mean, gosh, I retired in 2013. I dove right into TV on Fox and kind of been there since then, which has been so awesome to be a part of Big Noon Kickoff and just see our growth in college football on Fox over the years. So that's been a lot of fun. And then just kind of, the last couple of years, I really have my wife to thank. Is just really trying to pursue other things, just really just to kind of step out of my comfort zone at times, pursue other things, invest in other things, do other things, all those guys, just kind of live life and have fun doing it. I'm 41, I'm about to be 42 soon. So just trying to take advantage of this window of time, enjoy my family, kids, enjoy meeting new people. The pod has been awesome. Like I said, 2 years ago, I would have never envisioned I'd be doing a podcast live from Lambeau at the NFL draft. It's been a lot of fun and really cool. I'm super grateful for it all.
Absolutely. And we'll shift gears a little bit here with the draft. I mean, what are these guys that are about to hear their names called? This is something obviously you enjoyed one day, but what is going through their heads as they're about to hear their name? Then, of course, when that sigh of relief comes down, they know what's next. What's that whole experience like?
It is. It's hard to explain, right? If you haven't experienced it, it is an emotional time. It's just, you got to remember all these guys. Like, we all come from different parts of the country, different walks of life. Everyone has a unique personality. Like, that's what makes football so fun. That's what I miss about it. I miss the locker room. I miss just getting to know all these different guys and their backstories and lives. And you can really see when a player's name is called, you can just see the emotion, the family. Like, it's a lot of work goes into that, a lot of tough times, injuries, just, like being a professional athlete is really hard. It's really hard to make it. So when you have an opportunity and your name gets called, whether it's the first round or the sixth round, like, look at Tom Brady, like, it just, like, it's a lot of hard work that you hear that name called. It's like, wow, like, I made it. Now let's go work. Now let's go work even harder. But in that moment, it's incredible. Like, I love it. Like, that's the best part of the draft for me, is just watching the reaction of guys' names. And it really doesn't matter what sport. It's like a culmination of a lot of things. And it's a unique experience.
One thing, and I'll get a little specific on the draft for us here in Seattle. There's a question: will they or won't they take a quarterback? They certainly signed Sam Darnold, and the idea there obviously would be a quarterback could learn under him for a year or 2 or 3, whatever it might be. And I've been a big proponent, just me personally, last few years. Like, you see guys that are drafted, thrown into the fire, and it doesn't always work out. Every story, every guy is different. What is the benefit if Seattle were to go that route to, whatever it is, early rounds, later rounds, doesn't matter, that whomever they could pick can learn from the guys in house and maybe one day take over when they're ready? Well,
yeah, I mean, look, I don't see Seattle picking a quarterback in the first round. I think you guys pick 18, right? Is that what it is? And Sam. Look, I love Sam. He's a USC kid. I've known Sam forever. Tremendous year. I think he's a really like I think last year proved it. I think he's a really good football player. He's going to win a lot of games for Seattle. I think when you have a guy like that, and whether they maybe go quarterback second, third, whatever it is, like, you just get an opportunity to learn a system. I was drafted in 2006. I started by week 5. I backed up Kurt Warner, who's a Hall of Famer. So I had that experience where I was drafted to replace him and be the future, and that didn't work out. But, he had 5 games. I kind of learned a little bit, and I was thrown into the fire, and it was different back then. Nowadays, you're seeing a lot of rookies play right away, and they're thrown into the mix, and they're expected. But a lot of like you're seeing the evolution of, even in college football, a lot of these kids are more prepared. You're seeing a lot of rookies have tremendous success, which is just different now. So I like the situation Seattle's in. At 18, you're going to have a chance to get a very good player based on need or availability. And I think they roll with Sam, and maybe they target, one of those kind of mid-round QBs that they find their diamond in the rough that they can groom over the next couple of years.
Well, maybe at 18 they'll take somebody to protect Sam, right?
Yeah, well, I always say this: like, you can never go wrong if you got a big boy up front that falls to you at 18, or maybe DK Metcalf's gone. Maybe you go get one of an elite receiver at that pick. You're going to see some receivers go at that time too. So we'll see what they do.
So last question, because I know you got to go. And I'm sure you've answered this one about 5 times, but the NIL world that we see right now, first of all, my goodness, what would that have been like 20 years ago, right? But what's your take on the landscape? And certainly great thing for players, but probably some regulation needed as well, right?
Well, I would have made a lot of money 20 years ago, that's for sure. Yeah, I think you're seeing some of these situations unfold, which are unfortunate, especially around the quarterback position. At the end of the day, at the end of the day, I don't think it's anybody's fault. It's not the school's fault. It's not the player's fault. It's the NCAA, and we've seen that. There are no guardrails. There's no rules. You hear the term Wild Wild West. It still is that until something's. I think the rev share model and all that will sort of eliminate some of the stuff that we're seeing. But there's no governing body. There's no CBA. There's none of that. So that's why you're seeing the players being able to kind of sit out, players being able to leave when they want. I'm not particularly a fan of all of that per se, but again, it's hard for me to say that because I don't know what I get asked that. Well, what would you? I don't know what I would have done. It was different 20 years ago. People didn't transfer as much. They still did, but you had to sit out a whole year and all that. This year, it kind of loses there's not a lot of loyalty and commitment, and you can talk about coaches, you can talk about players. So I think we'll see some changes, with the rev share model and all of that, and these players will have contracts and all that kind of stuff. But I'm all for players getting paid. I think players need to educate themselves. These young men need to educate themselves on what all of this is, and that's unfortunately on them to do. It's people around them. It's agents. It's there's a lot of good people out there, but there's also a lot of bad people out there that are taking advantage of these kids.
Absolutely. I really appreciate that insight. We're the same age, so looking at your crew getting that would have been something. Hey, really appreciate your time. I know you got more calls.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for taking time for us.
Of
really
course.
Awesome time.
Good luck in the draft, guys.
It'll be
Thanks
fun.
for having me.
I said this earlier, Chris. I will say it again, just how Matt and I finished that conversation, of course. Could you imagine the NIL money those national championship 04, 05-ish USC teams would have made?
Yeah, LA in its prime, and LA supporting that team, and Reggie Bush and Matt Leinart and Lendale White. I mean, they would have been stars making millions in LA, the bright lights of that big city. Whew! We are waiting for the third pick in the Inside the Arena draft. Bill Fesh.
I only go on the chime.
Bill Fesh.
He says no. Oh, there. Well, that's fitting because the third pick in the 2025 NFL Draft, the New York Giants select backup punter Niko and there you go.
And with the fourth pick, it's David Lee who's going to take us out.
You've been listening to Inside the Arena with Niko and Chris. Please subscribe on your favorite platform. Until next time.
Inside the Arena was presented by Snoqualmie Casino and Hotel, Seattle's closest sports book.